It's almost impossible to be in Southern California and not know who Big Boy is. He's been a hip-hop radio DJ for over 25 years and has been a part of the West Coast hip-hop scene from the very beginning. There's stories of him hanging out with superstars like Tupac and Michael Jackson, and he's interviewed almost every hip-hop recording artist that there is. But getting to that kind of success wasn't easy. Homelessness, gangs, drugs, and a near-fatal weight loss surgery are just a few of the things Big Boy had to overcome to become the voice of Los Angeles. Big Boy was born Kurt Alexander on September 8, 1969, in Peoria, Illinois. At the age of 2, his mother moved him and his siblings to Los Angeles. His father stayed behind in Chicago. After arriving in LA, Big Boy's mother got a job as a nurse's aide. She didn't make a lot of money, but she did make enough to move the family into an apartment. The apartment was small, but Big Boy and his 4 sisters and 2 brothers were close, so they didn't mind sharing space. And Big Boy's mother always made sure he and his siblings had what they needed. His mother would cook family meals every night when she got home from work. Big Boy loved his mother's cooking. So did the whole family. But from a young age, he seemed to enjoy food and eating a little more than everyone else. The first time this became clear is when Big Boy was 5 years old and tasted McDonald's for the first time. He was hooked. He loved the way it tasted and how good it made him feel. So every time he was given money, he spent it at McDonald's. As the years went on, Big Boy and his family were happy, but soon, the cost of being a single mother with 7 young children started to pile up. Big Boy's mother's income alone wasn't enough to pay the rent. They would move from apartment to apartment to try to keep up, but eventually, his family got evicted. When Big Boy was 10, he and his family started living in low-budget motels around LA. Some motels they would stay at for a few weeks, and others a few months. 8 people in one motel room with 2 beds. Big Boy, who was the second youngest, always slept on the floor. He slept on the floor so much growing up that when he went to the doctor said his muscles were becoming flat. When Big Boy and his family couldn't afford to live in a motel, they stayed in shelters. And once, when they couldn't stay at a motel or a shelter, the entire family slept on a park bench. But during the whole time they were homeless, Big Boy's mother worked hard to get the family back on their feet, and he and all his siblings stayed enrolled in school. His mother got an overnight job at a factory and would take the bus to and from work. As Big Boy watched his mother do all this on her own, she made him believe that anything was possible, a belief that he took with him into his adulthood. But as Big Boy was learning about the concept of hard work, he was also learning about the concept of comfort food. With all the instability around him, he began a habit of eating as a way of making him feel better. And by the time he was in high school, he weighed almost 300 pounds. Despite his weight, Big Boy never had a problem making friends or getting girls, and he never felt insecure or self-conscious about his size. In fact, he didn't think about his size at all. He stayed active, practiced martial arts, and overall was in good health. No one around him, not even those in his family, ever suggested that he needed to lose weight. Eventually, as things got better for his mom and family, they were able to move into another apartment. The apartment was located in a neighborhood where crime and violence was common. As Big Boy's life grew more stable, he started taking an interest in hip-hop music. He would listen to Ice-T and NWA, and he and his friends would rap at school. Big Boy loved everything about hip-hop, and he knew from the first time he'd heard it that he wanted to be a part of the movement. Around this same time, Big Boy also got involved with gangs. He became affiliated with gang members from the neighborhood he'd moved to, and he started fighting, carrying guns, and skipping school to go to the projects. But after seeing 2 of his classmates go to jail for murder, and seeing one of his friends accidentally shoot himself to death during a confrontation at a house party, Big Boy decided he would focus on music. And in the 8th grade, that meant he was going to be a hip-hop DJ. He put together some homemade turntables and would offer to DJ anywhere. High school dances, basketball games, local house parties. He didn't care where it was, and he didn't care if he got paid or not. He just wanted to be a DJ. By the time he turned 18, Big Boy was going by the name Scratch. And since Big Boy had also been rapping since he was 13, he started to consider a career as a rapper. At some of their events, his partner would DJ, and Big Boy would grab the mic and rap to the crowd. Being both a DJ and a rapper, Big Boy slowly made his way into the music scene. He went to every hip-hop concert in Los Angeles and got the opportunity to open up for local LA rappers. This also meant he could network with artists and executives in the music industry. But after years of working to make a name for himself, his career as a rapper still hadn't taken off, and his DJ gigs weren't paying the bills. In need of some fast money, he started hustling to support himself. He sold crack cocaine for a couple years, but stopped after seeing the destruction it was doing to some of his customers. Then he started running scams with credit cards and cell phones, and he did that until 1992, when he was then offered a job as a bodyguard for the group The Far Side. He was 23 years old, and his new bodyguard job gave him a chance to travel the world and get away from his life as a hustler. Because of his size, Big Boy was good at being a bodyguard. He always carried guns, but he also knew how to fight because of his years in martial arts. While on tour, Big Boy weighed 400 pounds. There was always food around, and sometimes he would eat even when he wasn't hungry. It still hadn't occurred to him that his weight was a health problem. Eating felt good to him, so he simply adjusted his life around his size. He would buy 2 seats on an airplane, get an aisle seat at the movie theater, and he would never go to a restaurant where you had to sit in a booth. And when he got pulled over by the LAPD, he would hide his guns under his stomach. In 1994, during a break from touring, Big Boy was introduced to Rick Cummings, the program director for Power 106. Rick took an instant liking to Big Boy, and after only one meeting, offered him a chance to be on the radio. Big Boy, at that point, had never even thought about being on the radio. Up until then, he still wanted to be a rapper. Even as a bodyguard for the Far Side, rapping was his dream. But he figured he'd give it a shot and agreed to do one overnight show. One night turned into 2, and the next week Rick Cummings offered Big Boy a full-time job as Power 106's overnight DJ. Big Boy quit bodyguarding, ended his rap career, became a radio DJ, and never looked back. His first contract was for $50,000 a year, the most money he'd ever made in his life. It was so much money to him at the time that he couldn't even imagine how he would spend that much in 1 year. After 6 months of being on the radio, he put $17,000 down to buy his mom a house. And after a few years of savings, he paid the house off. His mother lived in that same home until the day she passed, and Big Boy still owns the house to this day. From 1994 to 2001, Big Boy became Los Angeles' most popular hip-hop DJ. Listeners loved him. He was funny and a natural entertainer, and people started calling him the voice of LA. He went from the overnight show up to the midday show, then up to the most listened to morning show. During his morning time slot, he would interview the biggest names in hip-hop, and is also where Big Boy created some of his iconic skits, like the phone taps. To further promote the morning show, Power 106 put up Big Boy billboards all over Southern California. The streets loved them, and Big Boy loved doing them. The billboards showed everyone in the city who Big Boy was, and he went from being popular to being famous. The radio did a whole series of billboards, even one which showed Big Boy actually doing the splits, another thing he learned while doing martial arts. As Big Boy became more successful, his weight got more out of control. He would eat extra large pizzas all by himself, and buy a 14-piece bucket of Kentucky Fried Chicken and eat it on the drive home from work. By 2002, he weighed 500 pounds and wore a size 66 pants and 8X t-shirt. And still, hardly anyone suggested he lose weight. That was until the day Will Smith came into the radio station. Will Smith, who had become a friend of Big Boy's over the years, was concerned that Big Boy's size might one day kill him. Will Smith recommended a weight loss challenge and offered to donate $1,000 to charity for every pound Big Boy lost. Big Boy agreed, and after 8 months of diet and exercise, he lost 111 pounds, and Will Smith donated $111,000 to the Ida's Son Foundation, a nonprofit organization Big Boy created in the memory of his mother. But just days after the challenge ended, Big Boy was back to his same eating habits, and within a year, he was back up to 500 pounds. But this time, as he gained the weight, his feelings towards it was different. He now recognized that his weight was a problem, and he could no longer deny the way that he was eating was negatively affecting his health. He also started to experience lower back pain, numbness in his legs, and shortness of breath. obesity symptoms he'd never experienced before. So at the age of 33, Big Boy decided he needed to do something drastic to save his life. He had heard about a new weight loss surgery called gastric bypass, an extreme form of weight loss surgery where a surgeon shrinks the size of the stomach, which in some cases is irreversible. As Big Boy was deciding whether or not to have the surgery, he met the woman who would become his future wife and mother to their children. And Veronica stood by Big Boy and supported his decision to move forward with the surgery. In August of 2003, Big Boy flew to Atlanta to have a surgery. The surgery itself went smooth, and 10 days later he was back in LA weighing 30 pounds less. But after 3 months, he started having episodes of extreme fatigue and blackouts. Big Boy was rushed to the hospital, where doctors determined he was suffering from a rare condition where his body was losing weight too fast and couldn't retain the proteins and nutrients it needed to function. Once, he blacked out while on the air, and another time he had to do his whole morning radio show while lying on the floor of the studio. To save his life, specialists designed a backpack that contained liquid proteins and nutrients. The backpack was attached directly into his chest and would pump nutrients into his body 24 hours a day for 2 months. And through it all, Big Boy stayed on the air and never stopped working. 3 years later, Big Boy was feeling good and down to 240 pounds. And besides having to eat differently because of his smaller stomach, his life was getting back to normal. So, he decided to go in for another surgery. This time, it was to remove the excess skin he had after losing over 200 pounds. The surgery was supposed to be simple, but because of his body's previous problem with nutrients, he went into shock. He was admitted to ICU and had to be given 2 blood transfusions, his second near-death experience. After all that, Big Boy said no more surgeries. He'd planned to get more skin removed, but decided the risk wasn't worth it. Fast forward 15 years to today, and Big Boy says he's feeling better than ever. He now focuses on a good diet and exercises regularly, but also says that he's not perfect and still struggles to resist his old eating habits. In his book, An Extra Large Life, he says, "There's no diet, surgery, or one change in life that's a cure-all. Anything you struggle with is not going to resolve itself overnight." He adds that his best advice is just to always take care of yourself first, and the rest will fall into place. Big Boy has been named Personality of the Year 4 times from the Radio Music Awards and has been inducted into the Radio Hall of Fame. He has his own production company and his own label called Big Boy's Music. He's been nominated for a Hollywood Star, and his radio show Big Boy's Neighborhood now airs in over 30 markets. But Big Boy's no longer on Power 106. After 21 years with the station, Big Boy made the switch to the Real 92.3 in 2015, a move that resulted in a lawsuit being filed against Big Boy by the owners of Power, who claim he breached their contract. But the lawsuit was later settled out of court for an undisclosed amount. Big Boy now makes over $3 million a year as a radio DJ, a long way from his original $50,000 contract over 20 years ago. But listening to Big Boy every morning on the radio, you can tell his career has never been just about money. It's been about being able to be himself and enjoy his work while taking care of his family. It's been about entertaining his listeners while being a positive voice in the community. And it's been about respecting and preserving the hip-hop culture he helped to build. And that's the reason why Big Boy will always be known as the voice of LA.